Lottie Vermeer had guided hundreds of cyclists through the ribbon-stripped tulip fields of North Holland. But that April morning felt charmed, even by her season standards. A light sea breeze slipped across the polder, carrying the faint tang of salt from the Zuiderzee restoration canals and a promise of perfect riding weather. Her company, Tulip Trails and Tastes, prided itself on small groups, 8 guests, all equipped with glossy Dutch city bikes she tuned herself before every tour. She finished her checks at the barns behind the 17th century farmhouse that served as their base. Chains oiled, yes. Gear cables taut, yes. Brake pads aligned, she paused. The pads on the midnight blue Fiats looked off. Not worn wrong, as though someone had swapped them for dark cork. She squeezed the lever. The rubbery squeeze she expected was replaced by an odd compressive give, too soft to grip a metal rim. She pried one pad free. Instead of the usual graphite grey compound, she found something wrapped in moist tissue paper, tucked into the shoe. A bulb. An actual flower bulb, squat and glistening, like a baby onion, still furred with earth. "What in the name of Wilhelmina?" she muttered. At that moment, she heard footsteps crunching gravel. Dr. Hendrik van Eden, millionaire botanist, noted collector of heirloom tulip genetics, and the oldest member of today's group approached, with his helmet dangling from one hand. His coat was the color of saffron, and tailored so perfectly it probably cost more than Lottie's monthly lease on the farmhouse. He gave a courtly nod. "Our steeds ready for battle." Lottie slipped the bulb into her pocket. "Almost. Give me 5 minutes to tighten a few screws." He peered closer, eyebrows knitting. "Those drums on the rim brakes, are they?" "I'll handle it," she cut in, not wanting to alarm him or the rest of the guests assembling with croissants on the terrace. "Coffee still hot." Van Eden smiled, but Lottie thought she caught a glitter of concern behind his spectacles. He retreated toward the others, just as her assistant guide, Faisal, jogged over. "Everything good?" Faisal asked. "Not sure." She showed him the bulb. He whistled. "That looks like a Semper Augustus variant." Lottie frowned. She knew bicycles, tulip lore, and local history, but not granular botany. Expensive? "Legendary," Faisal said. Semper Augustus was the holy grail of tulip mania in the 1630s. The original strain is gone, but enthusiasts breed near-identical sports worth tens of thousands of euros per bulb. This could be a modern recombinant line. Someone replaced brake pads with bulbs worth more than the bikes, Lottie said. "Why?" Faisal shrugged. "Ask the millionaire." Except she couldn't. If this was a prank, she didn't want to embarrass a man whose donations funded half the botanical research in the Netherlands. If it was sabotage, she needed proof. She checked the other bikes. 3 more had their pads swapped. Hannah's, the American travel blogger, Li Zhen's, a shy Shanghai perfumer, and Orhan's, a jovial Turkish engineer. All bulbs were the same dusky burgundy color, each cushioned in damp tissue. She replaced every brake pad with spares from her toolkit, sealing the bulbs inside a zip bag. No time for deeper investigation. The itinerary demanded an 8:30 a.m. rollout to catch the blossom auction in Lies. They departed over the Dijk Road, tulip rows stretching in sunrise gradients, scarlet to tangerine to fuchsia. Lottie led, pointing out landmarks through her headset. The clouds resembled whipped cream islands, and the group's laughter knotted behind her like bunting. Yet Dr. Van Eden lagged. He rode upright, scanning fields with proprietary awe. Once Lottie glimpsed him wiping a tear beneath his glasses. He slowed further when they passed an abandoned glasshouse complex, its panes shattered like dragonfly wings. She pedaled back. "Everything okay?" "Lovely," he said. "Just memories." He sounded heavier than the calm scenery allowed. The tour stopped at Q Keenhof's side entrance for a private wander. While the guests dispersed among the fountains, Lottie opened her backpack. She and Faisal studied the bulbs behind a shrubbery. Faisal turned one under the light. See the fine copper veins? That's CRISPR engineering. Someone spliced ancient Semper Augustus sequences into a modern disease-resistant stock. How can you tell? I interned at Wageningen horticulture lab. This is cutting edge. Lottie absorbed that. So these are prototypes. Worth more than thousands? Maybe hundreds of thousands, he replied, and if they flowered true, they're priceless. But who'd cram them into brake shoes? Faisal glanced across the pond, where Dr. Van Eden was speaking intently on his phone, one hand shielding the mouthpiece. Someone who didn't want them discovered until after the bikes crashed down a hill, Faisal said quietly. Lottie imagined her guests flying downhill from the dunes to the coast this afternoon, brakes failing, injuries piling. She shivered. They resealed the bulbs and agreed to keep silent until they knew more. At noon, a catered lunch awaited at a cheese farm in Katwijk. While guests sampled Gouda, Lottie disappeared to call the police. The bulb crime unit in Haarlem sounded skeptical. Brake pads? Vivaro, the sergeant said. Perhaps a prank. They promised to send someone tomorrow. She hung up, frustrated, and walked back through the barn. Through slatted doors, she overheard Hannah interviewing Dr. Van Eden for her blog. Your rumored new cultivar, codenamed Phoenix, is it real? Rumors thrive like weeds, Van Eden chuckled. But yes, I've financed a program. A tulip that resurrects the extinct Semper Augustus pattern, yet rebirth after 4 centuries. What would one bulb cost? Incomparable, he said. But science, not money, motivates me. As Lottie stepped into view, Van Eden excused himself and slipped out a side door. Faisal approached, whispering, Van Eden's assistant just texted me. He displayed his phone. The message forwarded from Tulip Trail's office said the botanist's security team couldn't reach him. He hadn't answered calls since mid-morning, but he was just here, Faisal said. They searched the farm, no saffron coat, no midnight blue bike. He had vanished. Lottie's stomach dropped. Guest safety was her sacred duty. Losing a client, especially a high-profile one, could sink her company and conscience alike. She gathered the group. Dr. Van Eden has stepped away unexpectedly. We'll wait while our driver checks the perimeter. Concern rippled across faces. Orhan offered his drone camera. Lizian suggested asking locals. Hannah smelled a story and began filming. Lottie dispatched Faisal to the front gate. She scanned the yards. Van Eden's bike leaned against a fence, but its front basket was missing its small leather satchel, the one he carried everywhere, rumoured to hold seed samples. She unzipped the handlebar bag. Nothing except a folded field notebook. Inside was a sketched map of today's route, with one place circled, Hoofnagel Ruins. Never heard of it, Lottie whispered. Faisal reappeared. Guard at the lane saw a vintage cream Citroen drive off 10 minutes ago. Van Eden climbed in voluntarily. Kidnapped or rendezvous? Faisal frowned. The guard remembered the license plate belonged to a local greenhouse supplier. Bulbright. Lottie knew Bulbright's owner. Willem Hoofnagel, once a titan of tulip breeding, now bankrupt after a fungus wiped out his stock. His greenhouses were the ones they'd passed earlier. Hoofnagel Ruins. She left instructions for the driver to take the guests ahead to the museum in Leiden, promising to rejoin. Then she and Faisal mounted e-bikes and sped for the derelict glasshouses. Polder roads, deserted at midday, lend every rotation of the crank the sound of destiny. Sunlight bounced off canals in argent shards. Lottie's mind spun faster than her pedals. Rare bulbs hidden in brake pads. An obsessed breeder gone bust. A millionaire botanist missing by choice or coercion. They arrived at the complex, where skeletal frames clawed the sky. A faded no-entry sign swung like a yawning jaw. They left bikes and ducked through a gap. Inside, weeds wove through shards. Rusted rails for trolley carts still ran like veins. The air smelled of damp cellulose and abandoned hope. They followed scuffling sounds to a corridor of intact greenhouses. Through fogged glass, Lottie discerned silhouettes. 2 men arguing. One wore the saffron coat, the other brandished pruning shears, tall and gaunt. Willem Hoofdnagel. An empty crate rested on a potting bench, its foam cushioning moulded into 4 bulb-sized hollows, exactly the number found in brake pads. Lotte's heart hammered. She eased the door ajar. "Hid 'em in those tourist bikes," Hoofdnagel was saying, voice tremulous with fury. "Perfect cover until my buyer arrives tonight. No customs, no scanners. And you, traitor, you removed them?" Van Eden's voice was soothing. "Willem, please. The bulbs belong in open science, not black markets." "Open science never paid my debts," Hoofdnagel snarled. "You stole my research, my investors." "I offered partnership after you poached my staff." Hoofdnagel lunged. Van Eden stumbled backwards into a tray of soil, glasses clattering. Lottie stepped in. "Gentlemen, enough." Both men turned, startled. Lottie's appearance seemed to jolt Hoofdnagel into flight. He bolted down the corridor, knocking aside pots. Lottie chased but tripped on irrigation tubing. By the time she regained footing, he had vanished outside. Faisal helped Van Eden stand. The botanist steadied himself and retrieved his crushed spectacles. One lens was shattered. "Are you hurt?" Lottie asked. "Only pride," he said. "Thank you." Police sirens wailed faintly. Someone must have called them, perhaps a farmhand. Van Eden exhaled. "I owe you an explanation." They moved into a modest office, still miraculously intact. Dust motes whirled as he spoke. "Willem and I were once partners," Van Eden said. "We co-developed the Phoenix line, resurrecting Semper Augustus. But when mosaic virus struck his stock, investors fled, and he blamed me. Desperate, he arranged to sell bulbs, our bulbs, to a clandestine collector in Dubai. Out of guilt, he confessed his smuggling scheme yesterday. He'd hide 4 bulbs in inert objects, courier them through tourist channels." Lottie held up a brow. "Brake pads, precisely. He knew I'd be on your tour. Inside information from your office's public roster. He planted the bulbs last night in your barn. Then cold feet hit him. He asked me to meet here to negotiate alternatives. But his desperation overcame reason." Faisal frowned. "Why didn't you tell us?" "I feared exposing Willem to legal ruin." "I hoped to retrieve the bulbs quietly." Lottie crossed her arms. "People could have been injured. You still boarded that Citro?" "I thought persuasion possible." He shook his head. "I was naive." The sirens neared. Van Eden looked exhausted. "Where are the bulbs now?" "Safe," Lottie assured. "Backpacks." He sighed in relief. "They must go to the university gene bank, publicly registered, so no one can hoard them again." Police cars pulled in, tires crackling over gravel. Officers entered, Lottie explained rapidly. They launched a search for Hoofdnagel among the greenhouses. While statements were taken, Van Eden sat on a crate, shoulders slumped like wilted petals. Lottie placed a water bottle in his hands. "You may still face questions," she said softly. "But you saved lives by confessing." He gave a rueful smile. "A guide's quick inspection saved lives. I merely caused trouble." Outside, officers signaled. Tracks led toward the canal. A patrol boat would scour water lines. Hours later, with events half settled, but exhaustion climbing, Lottie called her driver. The museum tour in Leiden had ended. Guests enjoyed dinner at a canal-side bistro. Van Eden insisted on rejoining and publicly thanking Lottie. The police escorted them back to the bikes. Sunset painted the sky with brushstrokes reminiscent of... what else? Tulips. As they ran, Eden spoke in low tones. "People think tulip fever died in 1637, he said. "Truth is, the fever simply changed hosts. From speculators to scientists, smugglers, dreamers, you witnessed its latest mutation. When profit outruns ethics, accidents follow, Lottie replied. He eyed her with new respect. Consider coming to my institute. We need practical minds. She laughed. I'm happiest in the saddle. The restaurant terrace erupted in applause when they coasted up. Hannah, camera rolling, exclaimed, "The missing millionaire returns!" Guests peppered him with questions. He gave a concise account that praised Tulip trails for vigilance. Lottie slipped away to call her mother, who watched the news and worried whenever sirens sounded in Holland. She admitted dramatic details, but admitted, "Yes, Mum, it was a day." Later, as dessert arrived, police phoned. They'd found Hofnagel's jacket by the canal, but no body. Only footprints leading to a narrow service road. He might still flee. Lottie handed the phone to Van Eden. He listened, eyes heavy, and promised cooperation. After hanging up, he said, "Part of me pities Willem. Obsession, like fertilizer, can burn the root if too strong." Lottie nodded. But obsession also birthed Phoenix. "The same fire, tempered differently." He smiled. "You speak as a horticultural philosopher." She shrugged. "Guys gather many metaphors." Night settled, string lights glinting. Li Zhen presented little vials of Tulip Absolute perfume to each guest as souvenirs. Lotta received one labelled Hope. Faisal joined her, lowering his voice. "Van Eden's Institute wants the bulbs delivered discreetly tonight. Buddies will escort you and I. Let's finish what we started." They left the party early. The guests toasted them with clinking glasses. A patrol car transported them and the precious zip bag to Wageningen. On the ride, Lottie finally opened her phone's calculator and counted words for a future blog post, her own record of the day's wild ride. Numbers comforted her, control regained. At the lab, sterile white corridors replaced rustic barns. A cryobank technician awaited. Van Eden arrived separately, still in that saffron coat but now splattered with greenhouse dirt. An incongruous badge of battlefield honor. He signed forms, then let Lottie and Faisal insert each bulb into cryo capsules. As liquid nitrogen hissed, the world felt momentarily quiet, scientific, safe. "All 4 accounted for," the technician confirmed. "Genetic sequence will be published under open license within 48 hours. Van Eden exhaled, tension draining. Then Phoenix truly rises. Outside the facility, moonlight silvered the Rhine. Lottie leaned on a railing, cycling helmet dangling from her hand. Van Eden joined her. "I fabricated excuses earlier," he said. "Truth, I called you because you inspect details others ignore. I knew if bulbs were hidden on those bikes, you'd notice. I gambled on your competence." She shot him a sideways glance. "You gambled with my client's safety?" "Yes." Shame tinged his voice. "No apology suffices, but I'd like to atone. A gift." He produced a small envelope. Inside lay a ticket for Tulip Mania 400, an upcoming global horticulture summit in Istanbul. "All expenses covered. You should share today's story." She eyed him. "The story isn't finished. Hofnagel's still out there." Van Eden nodded. "The police will catch him. Tulip fever may burn, but light exposes rot." She pocketed the ticket. "I'll think about it." He bowed lightly, then departed with guards. Faisal emerged, tossing their bike keys. "Ready for one last ride back to the hotel?" "Always," Lottie said. They pedaled through quiet streets lit by sodium lamps. The wheels hummed, gears clicking like a lullaby. She inhaled cold night air tinged with distant flower beds. The day had begun with sabotage and fear. It ended with legally protected bulbs. A missing breeder and new respect earned. Yet something nagged. She braked to a stop by a canal scanning dark water. "Faisal, what if Hofnagel knew we'd secure the bulbs here? He couldn't predict police escort. Unless he wanted publicity, to inflate black market demand for any clone he still holds." Faisal grimaced. "That possibility exists. So what? So we stay alert, tours continue, guests ride safe. We refuse to let obsession victimize innocence. She set off again, faster now, strength renewed by resolve. Wind streamed past, carrying the scent of wet soil and tomorrow's blossoms. Under starlight, every canal mirrored the sky, and Lottie felt the world was both fragile and magnificent, like a tulip petal, easily bruised yet glowing when tended. Back at the farmhouse, she stored bikes, locked barns, and paused before shutting lights. Rows upon rows of brake pads hung on the wall, humble bits of rubber that saved lives quietly every day. She reached up and ran her fingers along a set, envisioning brake shoes gripping rims down the dunes, safety in the mundane. Then she turned off the switch. Darkness settled, but she smiled, seeing in her mind the sunrise stripes awaiting tomorrow. In the hush, a promise bloomed louder than any siren. Vigilance, curiosity, kindness. These would guide her path like torchlit tulips across the night.